The first one being how an algorithm feels from the inside.
I realized we leaned into this, must have been subconsciously last episode. We talked about like it must feel more like Network 2, right?
Yeah.
And that's essentially this point. So to remind listeners, Network 1 was the pentagram-shaped network around, we can use Blegs and Rubes again, with the nodes being the color, the luminance, the interior, the texture, the shape, and the nodes lighting each other up as distinct things that, per piece of evidence coming in, would count towards like kind of Blegness or Rubeness, right?
And every node is independent, but every node is connected to every other node, so they all influence each other.
Right. He talks too about what computer scientists call big O notation, but the amount of computation required to like scale Network 1 is huge, whereas Network 2 is really easy. It looks like a stick figure with one piece in the center called Bleg or Rube, and then the same nodes on the outside.
All the nodes on the outside connect only to the central Bleg or Rube node.
It either glows or it doesn't glow. It's red or blue, whatever. The cool thing about that is, the cool bug / feature is that you can answer all the questions. What color is it? What shape is it? Etc. And then still wonder, but is it a Bleg?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and importantly, the thing in the middle, Blegness and Rubeness, isn't a thing that you can test or identify.
Yes.
It's a category we made up.
Yeah. You can test and identify all the outside nodes, but the inside one has no objective yes or no.
Right. Fred here has no feathers. He's a biped. But look at that. He's only got 9 fingers. Oh, man, is he a human? I'm still wondering, even though he checks all the boxes, right? Except for the fingers one.
Yeah.
So like, it's only because our brain works like Network 2 that these are questions at all.
Yep. He says that it feels like there's a leftover unanswered question, possibly, even if you've answered every single node on the outside. And he used the example that actually connected with me a bit was the Pluto one. He says, we know where Pluto is, where it's going, we know its shape and its mass. He didn't mention that we know it's cleared out its orbit or it hasn't, but that's another one. But the question is, is it a planet? And that one still niggles at me a little bit sometimes late at night when I'm showering or whatever I do late at night.
Insert Neil deGrasse Tyson, get over it or deal with it, whatever he said.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not a planet, but
the thing is, it feels like it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because planet feels like it means something.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I like that he chose different examples. If you really want to feel aged, the top comment was 17 years old.
Oh, wow.
Or 16. Abortion is murder because it's evil to kill a poor, defenseless baby.
Mm-mm.
I feel like that's actually not quite as illustrative an example as Pluto, but it's like clearly you're pushing the wrong thing into the wrong category here, right?
Yeah. The two things about this post that really stuck out to me when first reading, and it's interesting because now that I went back and reread this, all of it just felt like, yep, there's nothing new to see here. So I guess I've really internalized this. The idea of all of us are algorithms, and how we see the world is how running our algorithm feels from the inside. What he says is, when you look at Network 2, the one with the central node that has Bleg or Rube, you're seeing an algorithm from the outside. But the way that neural network structure feels from the inside, if you yourself are a brain running that algorithm, is that even after you know every characteristic of the object, you still find yourself wondering, but is it a Bleg or not? And he says, if you are mind constructed along the lines of Network 1, you wouldn't say it depends on how you define planet. You would just say, given that we know Pluto's orbit and shape and mass, there's no question left to ask. Or rather, that's how it would feel. It would feel like there's no question left. But the thing is, it feels like there is a question left because, like I said, it still bothers me. Just a tiny bit.
I like it. And it is fun because I had the same experience rereading this, because I read it, not when it was new exactly. It would have been, 3 years after, if this came out in 2007, give or take a year. But it does make me feel like I've grown a bit because now this feels intuitive.
Yeah.
Whereas back then it felt like, profound and counterintuitive. It's still, I can't shirk its profundity just because now I'm accustomed to it. But
right.
It feels like, oh, I get this. Not like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. I get that. Yeah. The other quote you pulled out is a nice way to illustrate another version of this.
Oh, the other one I pulled was, you think, why look, this cup is green, not the picture in my visual cortex of this cup is green. We don't instinctively see our intuitions as intuitions, we just see them as the world.
That to me, it reminds me, that asking someone if they believe something or asking them if they think something is true is tantamount to the same thing.
Yeah.
Really, the question should always be, well, I believe it's true,
Yes.
right? Or the
Yeah.
answer should always be that. Speaking of, quick side thing,
Mhm.
I wish I'd gotten a chance to actually make that bet with you and Matt before, with you and or Matt for $50 about the superconductors,
Oh, okay.
because I would have won.
You would have won, yes.
I'm bummed, but that was going to be my consolation prize. I wanted it to be true.
Yeah.
But my consolation prize would have been $50. So
Was it $50 we were offering?
now we're too far aside. But you guys were going to record when I was out of town,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I was going to send you a thing to read on the air, but I did say I'll bet you guys $50 that turns out to either be a nothing burger or it turns out to be like impossible to scale.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, whether I would have accepted or not depends a lot on the terms. Like, I wouldn't
Yeah.
accept 1-to-1 because I thought it was less than 50% chance it was going to be real. But like, if you offered me 10-to-1 odds, absolutely, I'd take that.
Yeah, you didn't accept a bet because we didn't get that far, but that's neither here nor there. To wrap this post up, I really liked it. His mic drop at the last line here. And so everything you try to say about how native cognitive algorithm goes astray ends up being contrasted to their direct perception of the way things really are and discarded as obviously wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a problem. Talking with people who haven't internalized these things yet.
Next time the opportunity comes up, I'll try to like just introduce this idea in the wild, point out that, like, look, we're arguing about something that actually isn't a thing.
Interesting.
I wish that more people were inclined to have the argument about whether a tree falling in the forest made noise or not, but that only works now among hypothetical people like Albert and Barry in the next post.
Yeah. So the next post is disputing definitions. And honestly, I had almost nothing to pull out of this because it felt like just repeating everything we've already said before. All I pulled from it was dictionary editors are historians of usage, not legislators of language, which seemed like a neat little thing to pull out to remind ourselves.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, this was like a dialogue to bring the point home.
Yeah.
Of the last several posts.
I do think this line points out that Eliezer is a descriptivist rather than one of those dirty prescriptivists.
Yes, and if I remember correctly, prescriptivists are people who say that language is, and not just language, but the like definitions of terms are meant to be like, no, that is how we are to talk about them, not that's what we're talking about.
Yes, Liam, come at me. Let's fight.
Right. What he does here at the end of the dialogue between these two people arguing is that he imagines going back in time. First of all, ask them about sound and auditory experience and vibrational waves. And because neither of them have been insulted yet, they both think, well, yeah, of course, those are different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, all right, well, let's call one of these this made-up word, one of these that made-up word. And then they have the conversation, and it lasts two sentences of like, yeah, well, it makes a fake word 1, but not a fake word 2. What's the next question?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I felt about this post was it felt very straw-man-y. I don't know, like, would this literally happen among normies? Because we can just not do that, right?
Yeah, no, he's making it as farcical, I think, as him actually using a time machine in the dialogue to go back and solve the problem. One of them insults the other one, and it's like, okay, well, now his heels are dug in.
Right.
You're a niddle-wicking, falumping pickled plumber,
The implication is, like, as soon as both people have taken a position, no matter what the position is, they're, like, unwilling to back down or not even back down, to back up a step or two and say, all right, let's discuss what we're talking about. Because they literally do say, let's discuss what we're talking about. They come to these definitions, but then they keep fighting anyway, which just seems dumb. Nobody would actually do that. And then when he comes and makes them talk about give those definitions to each other before they start arguing, then they're like, well, yeah, obviously there's no argument. And they just don't get into it because there was no, I guess, emotional commitment at the front. I don't know. Have I been around people who are not like this so much that I've stopped thinking people are like this out in the real world?
I don't know. You're asking the wrong person that question. But
That's fair.
To be fair, they didn't get emotionally immovable in their position until insults were proffered and accepted.
Yeah.
Now they can't back down without losing face, right?
I guess people just need to be more chill and jokey about insults anyway. Like, don't be such a whiny little crybaby about it. So you got insulted, whatever.
If he wanted to set the scene better, these two people could have been having an argument in front of their respective colleagues or something, right?
Oh, yeah, or in front of their lady friends.
Right. For some reason that there's something to lose by now losing this argument that someone has insulted you about, right? So
dude came at me in front of my girl.
Yeah. Again, this example about the people, destroying a friendship over does a tree fall in the forest alone, does it make sound? That's never going to happen. But the rest totally does, right? I feel like this happens all the time, especially on the internet.
Yeah.
Like if people conflate, for example, like the results of a an implicit bias association test with being actually racist,
I am
right?
sometimes reminded how bad the rest of the world is. I don't know. We had a containment leak on Twitter where a teapot tweet got out into the wider world, and it just reminded me how awful the rest of Twitter is, because it was just someone, kind of earnest posting about his experience of life, and it was like, look at this shit heel man, basically. And I was like, wow, I forgot how terrible the rest of things are.
Well, that does sound awful.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that, I mean that basically sums these two up.
Yeah.
I like I said, this isn't exactly how real life works, but when you distill it down, I think it totally can be. Anyway, what have we got next? We've got one of my favorites, feel the meaning,
Mm-hmm.
and the argument from common usage.
Yes. So come back in 2 weeks for those.
It's kind of funny, like just zooming out again to think of the overall reach of these posts as we go through like every section. A Human's Guide to Words. Why did he spend presumably a month or two writing blog posts on how we use language? Because there's going to be arguments aplenty about, well, that's not intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not real knowledge or something. So if you can get all that out of the way before he even talks about AI,
Mm-hmm.
people hopefully will, if they've read through these, they won't burn a lot of fuel having those dumb arguments.
Since there are so many people who haven't read the sequences, sadly, I've recently been seeing people saying, you know what? Just stop using the word intelligence when talking about AI. Talk about capabilities. That's what we really care about anyway. It basically means the same thing, and it stops people from getting hung up about whether these machines have a mystical human soul essence,
And then you can drop the artificial part too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're real capabilities.
Yep.
People talk about the shortcomings of ChatGPT, like, and again, that's actually not even the pinnacle of these technologies anymore, but it's still the most popular. They talk about it like it's some knockdown, like, oh, well, you give it three digit numbers and it can't multiply them or whatever.
Bitch, can you multiply 3-digit numbers?
Yeah, first of all, I can't without help, but it's a computer, should be able to do it. But it's also like I can hold in my head or 7 plus or minus 2 things at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to start throwing rocks, we got to look at how glass our house is, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is not a knockdown. That's not the knockdown that you think it is. You give this thing a calculator and it can do all the math you want.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Its capabilities are aplenty. Like I said, it was just kind of fun to think about why have these digressions on language. It relates to this directly, right?
Yeah, and it makes it easier for people who have read the sequences to talk amongst ourselves about things that are important when we don't have to substitute words and dumb things down for people who don't understand about how words work.
Right. Well, we certainly, at least in my experience, like on Discord or on the subreddit back in the day, was like, I didn't see a lot of people burning fuel about definitional arguments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet that can be the entire thing that schisms communities.
Mm-hmm.
That said, though, I do wonder, how does the quantum physics thing tie into AI? Well, when we get to those sequences, we'll contemplate that.
Yes.
All right.